We are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Oh, gosh. This is, I think, episode 3 of the No Name Accelerated Business Alliance show. I keep saying I need to come up with a name, but I haven't quite done that yet. But the goal, obviously, of these lives is just to really help and bring experts to you to help you take action in your business, to really, truly move forward, to get to allow you to get to know some of the members of the Alliance, because there's some amazing experts inside of the Alliance. And truly, like our tagline says, connect, collaborate, and conquer. That is our mission. We are here to connect. We are here to collaborate. We are here to help you conquer the world. And so today I have with me Kirsten Beske with Kirsten Beske Coaching. She is a life redesign coach and a change coach. And I would call her a bit of a mindset coach, even though she doesn't necessarily go by that title, but I always think of her when I think about mindset and change, and really diving deep into exactly what it is that you love and what is lighting you up and all of those things. And so today we're here. We're just going to kind of chat about how you can make small, consistent changes and actions inside of your business and or life to move forward, to continue to move forward. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Kirsten because she can explain it far better. And then we're just going to dive in and have some general conversation. As always, there's going to be some action items for you guys. So be ready to take action, take notes, ask questions. We can see the comments. So ask your questions. And Kirsten, I'm passing it to you.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me here today. And hey, everybody. So we thought it might be helpful to just talk about the challenges we all have when we set big goals for ourselves, right? Everyone who's probably listening to this is someone who's decided that they're really ready to pursue their dreams and they're got their business going. The people I work with are often trying to reinvent themselves and like take all of the skills that they've already done in one area of their life and really remold them and then relaunch them in a new area so that they can really move into their full power and their full purpose. And so when we talk about up-leveling for success, the first question to ask yourself is, what is your definition of success, right? Because my definition is going to be different than Michelle's definition. It's going to be different than your definition. And so what we really want to do is in the very first instance is to make sure that you understand your own values and your sense of meaning and your sense of purpose, and what's going to light you up so that when you decide to move towards that goal, you're not going to hit up against these subconscious roadblocks where parts of you are like, no, we're not going to do that because that's disgusting, right? Or that doesn't align with our value of whatever it may be. And so what I find is everyone's got different places their blocks pop up. And so you can start having clarity on your purpose and your goals and your meaning, and you can set these really fabulous long-term goals for yourself. But then you could find yourself kind of spinning your wheels and not moving forward. And so the question is, how do we get moving when we're spinning the wheels so we don't stay stuck for long? So we're all going to get stuck sometime, right? We've got to admit,
Yep.
like that's
Absolutely.
human, that's how we work. Sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes it's in our business, sometimes it's in our personal life. You just never know when it's going to pop up, but the tools you can use for any of these stuck places are really similar. And so whether you're trying to get time freedom or, more, work more in your zone of genius or make more money, whatever your version of like, if I could just do this, I would feel better about myself, but I'm not there yet. That's the place that we're talking about. How do we work in that little zone to get through that hard part? So, the thing that we sometimes lose sight of when we're dreaming big is all the little steps in between where we are and where we want to be. And I love the graphic. I don't know if it's Liz Fosslin, I think it's her name, Molly and Liz. They have graphics from their Hulu, I think it is. But there's one where it's like a big, huge vertical line, and then all the steps, little tiny steps up to it. And it's like where we want to be and then where we are. And the idea is that if you can build confidence by doing the little step one at a time, you're not going to have imposter syndrome. And you're not going to get stuck because you're only looking at what the next step is. And so you could imagine all the times in your life where this has been really clear. I remember I'm not a runner. I do consider myself an athlete, but not a runner. I had a sister. She ran a couple marathons. She said, Kirsten, you should run a marathon. I'm like, yeah, no. If I run a marathon, I will hurt my knees so badly I will never be able to walk again. So that's not happening, right? And then lo and behold, I had a couple kids. I was out of shape. I'm like, gee, maybe I should start running again, And so I got myself this little schedule, and it was like 2 miles, 3, 3, 2. Then it was like 3 miles, 4, 4, 2. 4 miles, 5,
Yeah.
and it just worked its way up over a 2-month period. And lo and behold, I ran a couple marathons, a couple half marathons, right? But I started so small, and I never started with this idea that, someday I'm going to run 26 point whatever miles. I never started that way. But I got to admit, in the back of my head, I was like, maybe that's possible. But, so you really, that's just one example of, if you start with the smallest possible chunk of whatever your biggest goal is, you may get there.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important with this. I have this conversation, I think, all the time, and I'm sure you do with your clients, and I have it with my clients, or just in general with coffee chat. Actually came up in a mastermind conversation yesterday too, is that actually too, the realization of when you're shooting for something that is so far away, right? Like that 0 to 60 or the 1 mile to 26 miles, and being able to actually identify, like, is this goal even attainable in this moment right now? And I think what I see a lot of is what keeps people stuck is that they've set a goal that is it's not about these big, hairy, audacious goals, right? Like everybody talks about that, but sometimes these audacious goals are not even physically possible. Like you cannot go from sitting on your couch to going to 26 miles running, right? You can't do that. You can't go from never having a client to 10K months. You can't go from, and all of these things. You're not going to go from college to a $200,000 C-suite executive role or something of that sort. And I think that's the problem, or what I'm seeing is what keeps people stuck. And I'm sure you do too, is like their goal it's not even really realistic in the moment. And that's where people get stuck, and that being able to break it down to what is that small step. So how do you really help people identify those small steps?
Right. Well, so I do think it's there's the big audacious goals, the big hairy audacious goals of which you spoke, but there's also some stretch goals, right? Stretch goals that are good for us, that are healthy for us to have a stretch goal, right? Because it helps propel us forward. And the problem comes in, I think people who struggle with perfectionism really are the people that can really get the most stuck in these places, is they see the end goal. In fact, I'm working with a client who wants to launch a podcast, and boy, did we have a session the other day where she was so stuck, and she was stuck because of the visibility issue of would her podcast be good enough? And unfortunately, this client, I asked her to simply interview a couple sample people to get them on video so she can get a sense of how it's going to feel and have some fun with it. And she she got stuck doing that just because whenever her mind goes to, oh my God, I'm going to be visible and people are going to judge me, she can't even take the very first step. So the steps have to feel so safe, right? Are in her fear. The fear of exposure, being vulnerable, being able, out there to be judged. I think we can all relate to that in every aspect of things. So then how do you get the small enough step that kind of integrates with your life normally so that it doesn't feel so horrible? And so I use this example a lot when I think about public speaking. So how many people have kind of a fear of public speaking? I mean, I definitely do. And when I was younger, I think I would pass out when I had to stand up in front of people. But I also had a stint as a ski bum out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. When I was younger, I was a ski bum, skied every day, and I waited tables at night. And in our restaurant, we had to go and tell the specials by memorizing them. We had to memorize them. We weren't allowed to bring a pad unless there was over 6 people. So I'd have to stand up and have to announce the specials with all the ingredients each night. And at
Oh,
first I thought
geez.
that was really hard, then it got easier and easier. In fact, fast forward, I went to law school. So I'm in my first year of law school and I have to do moot court. So I have to stand up in front of 3 judges and make my argument, may it please the court, blah, blah, blah. And I started like going to that fainting place. Like I could feel the edges of my vision getting like blurry. And then I was like, wait a second. It's just like telling the specials. And I took a breath. I'm like, okay, just talk to them like people. And I did, and it went really well. And it ended up being this like strength I had where I was in moot court competition and I went to nationals, and I ended up being a lawyer who was a litigator who tried cases to juries and courts. I mean, go figure, right? But if not for having that experience with the specials as a waitress, a server person, I never would have had that tiny step to get to the next step, to get to the next step. So when I'm arguing in front of the Vermont Supreme Court, which I did one day, I didn't die.
Right.
I was very nervous, but I didn't die. So I think finding what is the very smallest way in which you can practice your new skills to gain the confidence, right? So you can reflect back and think, I did that and I didn't die. So maybe I can do
What
that.
is it? Exactly. Yeah. That's a good point right there, is what is it that you can do to identify to gain the confidence? I can relate to the podcasting because it took me 2 years to launch my podcast for that same exact reason. Like, what if people don't like it? What if people, you hear so much about the haters, and like, if you don't have haters, and I was like, can I handle that? And what if I don't like my voice and that? And then I realized too, that I went live all the time, right? Like I used to go live all the time inside my Facebook group. And then when I could make that shift to say, your podcast can be the exact same, go get on camera and speak in the same way that you do to your audience all the time. It's no different, except for they just don't see your face, right? They're just hearing your voice. And when I can make that shift to really, really just like, you do it all the time and it's fine, right? Like it resonates fine other ways, like just get through this. And so when you can make, and the same thing, those shifts, it's like that little piece. It's like, okay, well, I gained my confidence going live. The first time I went live, I was like, it takes forever to gain that confidence, but now I don't think anything of it. And the same thing, it's like, you have to be able to relate to it. And I think that's a great point, is what can you do to relate to what your next step is of something you've already done, right? Like we've all already accomplished something scary. How can you do that? Just like you with the skiing and different things. I think that's a great tip right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that I think about when you think about confidence is, and this is a documented gender difference. So I'm not trying to like pick on women or men, but that they've measured, women who consider themselves ready to say apply for a job, do they think I'm qualified? So women apparently require being like having 80% of the qualifications before they'll even consider applying. And the men will look at the same thing, and if they have 20% of the qualifications, like 20 or 30%, they're like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so I do think as women, we have for whatever reason, socialization, we don't know why, but I think we hold ourselves to such a higher standard. Like we have to be, do these things, know ahead of time we can do the things before we feel comfortable doing them. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying let's acknowledge that and let's make sure that we can get our inner self to be that 80% confident, right? And so part of what I work with my clients on is kind of how do we get confidence that we can, in the moment, do what's necessary and survive, right? So it's, just knowing like I did it before and I was flying by the seat of my pants, but it worked out okay. So maybe this time if I'm flying by the seat of my pants, it'll still work out okay. And that can give you enough confidence to just take that risk, and then you do that and then you're ready for the next one. So
yeah, what is that? I don't know where that comes from. That question was like, but did you die? Like that. I can't remember what movie or show or something is like, but did you die? And I think it's the same thing. It's like, what is the worst case scenario too? And I always try to, when I'm talking with my clients and they're struggling or they're feeling stuck, it's like, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen here? Truly. And if I go back to my podcast, it's like, what is the worst thing that could happen? It doesn't take off. you cancel it. You can say you tried, right? Like you can at least say you tried. And I think that when you ask that question or position it in that way, most of the time they really can't answer it, right? And so keeping that in your head is like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Right.
What is truly going to happen if, tech issues? I have a client right now who will not release a product because she needs like 5 more people to tell her it's okay. She keeps sending it for free, getting this feedback. It's that perfectionism inside of her. And I was like, you know what? If that's what you need to do to get this product to the market, then let's do it. Let's ask as many people as we need to, you know what I mean? Because it's just, that's what she needed to do to build that confidence. Going from creation of project to launch didn't work for her. It just doesn't, because she didn't have enough confidence in herself. Is it good enough? Do people understand what I'm saying? Are they going to be able to understand my videos? And so when you can back it down, it's like, well, what step do we need in between? See, it was like that same thing. It was like, this went from step 1 to step 10 for her, and it didn't work. So I was like, what's the next step? Well, I need feedback. Okay, let's go get your feedback. And then she got some feedback. So she's starting to feel a little more confident. Then we sent it to somebody else. Then today she was like, I got another person I think we can ask. I was like, whatever, we're just going to keep doing it, because until she's confident enough to sell it and promote it, it's never going to happen, right? She's not going to sell the product because she's not confident in it.
Right. And if you think about it from a survival perspective, we have, if you think, we have 3 brains, and we have our human, neocortex, whatever, we think rationally, but the ones that are really running the show are the inner brains, that are the mammalian and the reptilian brain. And those are the brains that when they feel fear, they take over. Right. So your rational brain could understand all the reasons in the world why it's okay to launch the product, but it's being shut down by those other brains that are like, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. So it's perfect that you have the intermediate step, because then it can start to loosen the hold of those more primitive brains and all the fear of survival that they're just triggering. They're like, no, we really think you're going to die. We really think you're going to die. And so you can't even get to the rational brain until those can calm down. And frankly, that's like why a lot of people who do the different modalities to calm your nervous system, why they're so helpful. So there's a million ways to calm your nervous system down. One of them is doing exactly what we talked about with the small things that are measurable. But there's other ways you can identify that feeling of like, oh my God, I think I'm going to die. And I'm not going to die, but I can't move forward because I am in this place of fear of visibility, fear of judgment, fear of whatever, failure, right? And so sometimes having a practice that can help calm your nervous system down, whether that's getting a good workout in, doing some EFT tapping, if going to the massage therapist, right? Meditating, there's a million ways you can calm your nervous system down, but you first have to recognize that this is a thing that's triggering your nervous system, the fear, and then you need to negotiate around that. So small steps are an easy way to do that. Sometimes you can't even get your brain to think, what would the small step be? And that's why a coach is helpful, right? Because a coach can help
identify that. Yeah, I was just going to say, so like you made another key point there that I wanted to point out, is the realization of sometimes you can't even identify it, right? You have to, there's two sides to the realization. One, realization that this is a fear that's creeping up. And then 2, the realization of, okay, I identify the fear, but I don't know how to move past it, right? Like I don't know what that small step should be, because really, we are usually too close to our own project or problems or fears or insecurities or anything to be able to identify those small steps. It's very hard to identify the small steps of really what is. And I think sometimes too, I don't know if you see it in the people that you work with, because I know that we work with very different audiences in a lot of ways, but in my audience, but there's so many similarities, is that I think the overall environment of the world is that those small steps aren't good enough, right? Like you've got to be reaching for the bigger step. You've got to be launching. You've got to be a marathon runner. You've got to be up at 5:30. Like I think about even myself going back to the gym, like getting back to the gym in itself was a huge feat for me. Like, once you're out, it's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Then I started going at, 8. Now I'm back down to 7:45. Now I'm down to 7:30. I mean, ideally I'd like to be there by 6:30, 7 o'clock, because if I go at 7:30, it just makes my day later. But the reality is like, I haven't gotten up at 6 in a long time. I'm sure as hell not going to just start popping up out of bed and feeling good about it. I'm just not. It's just not who I am. And so I was like, you know what? Just start every week. I set I set it back about 10 minutes. And to me, that's good enough. That is enough for me to feel good about my forward momentum, right? Like if I can get there 10 minutes earlier every week, I'm doing really good, because getting there an hour earlier is not possible.
Yeah.
It's too big of a step.
Right. And I think high achievers tend to get trapped in that place, right? Like, well, if I'm not going big, then I'm not going to even try, because it's not worth it, unless I'm doing this really great thing. So, high achievers need to check themselves and cut back, and sometimes the world checks us for us, right? So, I had COVID end of January, thanks to my lovely 10-year-old. And I had some of those longer term recovery things that I was getting breathless walking upstairs for months plus. And so to like realize, oh, I'm not going to be able to do those things. So what can I do at this place, right? Always rechecking, where am I now and what can I do where I am, accepting where I am now, and then moving forward, and not letting that high achieving piece be like, well, I'm not even going to bother going to the gym because I can only lift 2 pounds right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Not getting stuck there. So
that's,
good for
I
you.
think too, the comparison too, right? The comparison of where others are at, but you can't compare because you don't know how long they've been on their journey either, right? Who knows? They could have, they didn't just decide to show up at the gym or decide to launch this product or start this, it's amazing to me. It's like that we automatically and just immediately assume like, oh, they're in the exact same place I am and I'm so far behind. No, a lot of times they're probably 5 years ahead of you or 6 years ahead of you. They were where you are at one point, but you didn't know them then, or you didn't have that information. There's so much, but we just immediately assume we're behind, and it's not the case.
Right. And I love that you brought that up, because the other person that we compare ourselves to is ourselves. And in the population I work with are people who are redesigning or reinventing themselves, right? So they've already had a high degree of success in whatever their first endeavor was, whatever their first career was, and now they're trying to reinvent themselves, and they're trying to and they're having to start at a place that's super uncomfortable for them, because there's not mastery yet, right? They're back to beginner status. And that's hard on your ego when you've already been in a successful place. And I remember when I switched careers from being a lawyer to a psychotherapist, oh my God, for the first 3 years, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I just felt like such a, it was so uncomfortable, because I did know what I was a partner at a law firm. I knew what I was doing. So, to have the, so you're not even comparing yourself to yourself. Sometimes you just have to really accept this is where I am, and
right
it's
now
going to be worth it in the long run. And so, any up level involves that discomfort, because you're moving from one personal identity to another personal identity, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to not feel like you have mastery, and that's okay, but you have to learn how to tolerate it. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because how many of us as entrepreneurs came from a corporate, right? Like in corporate, we were so confident, or in our job, wherever it was. I remember people used to say that to me all the time in my job. And I was like, I was so confident in my job and who I was and what I brought to the table. I never feared nothing. I was not afraid to buck the system. I was not afraid to kind of bring up confrontation, because I said, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to fire me. I'll go find another job, probably making more money, because I will, negotiate for more money. And then, which was fine. And I had this insane confidence. And then I start my business, and I'm like, every time I turned around, I was constantly questioning myself. And I was like, I don't understand where this is coming from, because I was such a confident person in my job. Why can't I bring that confidence? And it was just, like you said, it's new. It was a reinvention. It's something I hadn't done. I had done the skills. I had the skills. I had done certain tasks, but I had never been a business owner. I had never done this before and had to manage myself and other people,
Exactly. And so back to your, our other point and then you probably worked with a coach, who was able to reflect to you the things you needed to see to find those small steps and start to gain your confidence over time. And now you've been doing it for how many years now? And
Five,
yeah,
yeah.
and you're just rolling with it, and you've got some degree of mastery, but you had to stick with it, right? And so
Mhm.
that's the other thing that people, I think most people that people are hardier than we think. We have had the pandemic, so people's resilience are down, but people can really tolerate a lot if they have to stick with it though, right? You have to have that persistence over time, the small
Mhm.
steps over time. So you have to have a fair amount of stubbornness, right, or grit, as they say, to really expect success, because you do have to get through that uncomfortable, awkward beginning time when you're starting
Mhm.
something new. But
Yeah.
coaches are good for that, because everyone's been there. Really, I think that's an entrepreneur. There's always that first time, and
Oh, yeah.
that's how you can find out. Oh, well, what's a small step for you? Because I know where you're going, so I can tell you the next small step for you.
Right. It's having somebody that can always kind of see. I remember asking a client, what makes you keep working with me or in different things? And I remember her saying, because you're always 10 steps ahead of me. I'm always in the moment and
Mhm.
I know that you're always looking ahead. Like you're
Mhm.
always in that moment ahead. And it's like, yes, because I'm going to always give you that next small step, right? Like
Mhm.
you're here in the moment and you're mastering that, but I've got to be ahead of you to be able to identify what is going to be what we need to do next. And it's always very interesting to see, people in how they process that and whatnot. So, but anyways, I think it's been 25 minutes. We could go on and on. And
Yeah.
if you could give or wrap this up, I think, there was a couple key points here for those listening. We like to always wrap it up with the key points. I think one is, identifying those small steps, to realizing when your fear is showing up and realizing what's rational and irrational and different things. But what would you wrap this up with? What are some key things that you would give people?
Well, yeah. So you don't, you have small steps, recognizing when the fear comes in and realizing you're not going to operate from any wisdom when you're in the fear place. You really need to figure out how to calm your nervous system down. And then so working with someone who can help be a guide through this process is always helpful. But there's one thing we didn't talk about that I'd like to wrap up with is it's really important as you're moving through these journeys to somehow document and chart your progress, because the change happens so incrementally that in 1 year you could change a whole lot, but you won't know it, feel it, or appreciate it unless you can look back at something and be like, oh, whoa, look how far I've come. And I do think it's
Mhm.
important for us to celebrate that, right? To celebrate how far we've come. So, I think I would also say, as you're taking your small steps, whether it's in a journal or on a calendar somewhere or just on a notebook, just keep a little track of your little goals, because when you can look back over a year or 2 years or 5 years, then you can really celebrate, how much you have accomplished. And that's going to give you some more motivation for the next leap, right? So,
Absolutely. I'll never forget too, just to that point. It's so small, but and so silly. But like I remember going back through my Canva account. Even then, it's like, oh my God, my Canva from 5 years ago, even the things I was saying, the things that I was, the graphics that I was putting out there was like, oh, and then you see it now, and I'm like, wow, look how far you've come. I mean,
mhm.
there are really, if you can find those visual things, whatever it is. But for me, that was like, I'll never forget that day. I was like scrolling through, I think it was a year or so ago, and I was just like, wow, I really have come far, even because you
Mhm.
don't realize it. You just are going through the motions and you don't quite always realize just how far you've come. So, anyways, we're going to wrap it up. This was an amazing conversation. If you want to connect with Kirsten, you can do so on LinkedIn. If you want to get her contact information, visit the acceleratedbusinessalliance.com. Go up to the tab that says meet the members, and you can get all of her information. If you want to have a coffee chat with her, if you want to join her Facebook group, it's all there on our website. If you want to join us inside the Alliance, we would love to have a chat with you about that as well. And we'll see you here in 2 weeks with another expert and another member of the Alliance. So everybody take care and have a great day.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.